She lived a life of quiet lies. For 10 years, Elena Dawson was just a barista, hiding in the rain-soaked anonymity of a small town. She was human. She was normal. She was safe. But her blood was a secret, a legacy of moonlight and magic she'd buried with her slaughtered family. She was the last of her kind, pretending to be nothing. That was until the Alpha King arrived. He was a creature of absolute power, and with a single touch, he branded her soul, marking a human as his. But he didn't just claim a mate. He ignited a power that would either save them or burn their entire world to ash. The scent of burnt coffee and damp wool was the soundtrack to Elena Dawson's life. For 3,652 days, she had measured her existence in the mundane. She lived in Astoria, Oregon, a town perpetually shrouded in mist, nestled against the restless gray of the Pacific. It was the perfect place to be forgotten. It was the perfect place to hide. Elena's life was a fortress built of beige routines. She woke at 5 a.m. in her tiny, drafty studio apartment above a struggling bookstore. She drank a bitter herbal infusion, chokecherry, wolfsbane, and rowan, that she passed off as an artisanal tea. It tasted like ash and suppression, coating her tongue and dulling her senses. It was the poison that kept her human. By 5:45 a.m., she was unlocking the door to the Spotted Owl, the cafe where she worked. She'd wipe down the espresso machine, arrange the pastries, and prepare for the morning rush of fishermen and early-rising tourists. Her co-worker, Sarah Jenkins, a bright, bubbly human with an unfortunate taste in neon-colored beanies, arrived at 6:15 a.m. "Elena, you look dead," Sarah observed, not unkindly, as she tied on her apron. "You seriously need to stop drinking that swamp water tea and try a triple-shot mocha. And maybe see a guy who isn't fictional." Eleanor managed a weak smile. "I like my tea, Sarah, and my books are excellent company." "Whatever you say." Sarah began restocking the syrups. "Did you hear about the bigwigs up at the Titans Ridge Lodge? They booked the entire place, some kind of high-stakes corporate merger. The whole town is buzzing. They say the CEO is this ridiculously rich, scary, intense guy. Total recluse." Elena's stomach tightened. She hated it when large groups of outsiders came to town. It meant new faces, new variables, and new threats. "I just hope they tip well," Elena murmured, focusing on the portafilter. But under the surface of the coffee grounds and small talk, the other Elena was screaming. The wolf. 10 years ago, she hadn't been Elena Dawson, barista. She had been Alara Ashton, daughter of the Lunar Omega, the last of a bloodline that held a unique and dangerous gift, the ability to soothe the primal rage of the wolf. They were the great equalizers, the tenders of the pack soul, and for that gift they had been hunted. The memory was always there, waiting in the shadows of her mind. It wasn't a memory. It was a scar. The smell of pine and accelerant, the glint of silver blades under a full moon, the guttural roars of her father and mother, not fighting, but trying to calm their attackers even as they were cut down. She remembered the leader of the hunters, a tall man with eyes as cold and grey as a winter sky, looking at her hiding place in the woodpile. He hadn't seen her. Or perhaps he'd let the 10-year-old girl go, assuming a child so weak could never survive the winter alone. He was wrong. She had survived. She had run until her paws bled, then forced her first agonizing shift back into a human girl. She had found a bus station, stolen clothes, and erased Alara Ashton from the world. Now, she was Eleanor Dawson, and Eleanor Dawson was human. That evening, the unease that had simmered all day began to boil. A storm was rolling in, but this was different. It was an electrical current in the air, making the hairs on her arms stand up. The scent-blocking tea was struggling to hold her wolf down. The animal inside her, dormant for a decade, was pacing, restless. "They're close," the wolf whispered, a voice she hadn't heard in years. "Shut up," Elena thought, gripping the edge of the counter. "There is no they. There is only us. And we are human." A sudden, sharp pain lanced behind her eyes. It felt like a string, long dormant, had just been plucked, a deep, resonant thrum that echoed in her very bones. "Elena, you okay?" Sarah was looking at her, concerned. "You're white as a sheet." "Just a headache," Elena lied, rubbing her temples. "Must be the storm." But she knew, with a certainty that terrified her, it wasn't the storm. The corporate retreat at the lodge wasn't corporate. The restless energy in the air wasn't from the weather. It was from him, the Alpha. The bell on the cafe door chimed, cutting through the silence of the empty, rain-lashed shop. Elena looked up, her heart stopping in her chest. He didn't just walk in. He consumed the space. He was tall, impossibly so, with shoulders broad enough to block the doorway. He wore a simple black Henley that strained against a physique that wasn't built, but carved. His hair was the color of jet, damp from the rain, and his eyes were a piercing, unnatural gold. He was the most beautiful and terrifying thing she had ever seen. He was the CEO Sarah had mentioned. He was the man from the lodge, and he was, unmistakably, a werewolf, an alpha of blinding, suffocating power. He was Kaelan Rathborn, the Alpha King, and he was looking right at her. Kaelan Rathborn, Alpha King of the United North American Pax, was in a foul mood. This summit at the Titan's Ridge Lodge was a political necessity, a gathering of his strongest alphas to discuss the rising tensions with the European covens and the rogue factions in the south. It was a week of posturing, veiled threats, and diplomacy, and he despised every second of it. His beta, Gideon Stone, a broad, pragmatic man with a scar running through his left eyebrow, was sitting opposite him in the lodge's grand hall. "The Redwood Alpha is posturing," Gideon said, reviewing his notes. "He wants more territory in exchange for his loyalty." "He wants a fight, not territory," Kaelan growled, staring into the massive fireplace. "He smells weakness." "They all smell weakness, Kaelan. You are 28 years old, 2 years into your reign, and you are unmated. The great houses, Valerius, Ironwood, Crescent, are all pushing their daughters on you. They see an empty throne beside you, and it makes them bold. My mate is my concern." Kaelan stood, his sheer presence making the air crackle. He was agitated, his wolf clawing at his skin. For the past hour, a strange pull had been distracting him, a faint, inexplicable tug from the town below. It was impossible. His fated mate, the other half of his soul decreed by the moon goddess, was supposed to be a signal as bright as the moon itself. This was just a faint, irritating buzz. "I need air," Kaelan said, shrugging on a heavy jacket. "And coffee. This lodge swill tastes like mud." "My king," Gideon began, but Kaelan was already gone. He stalked out of the lodge, ignoring the bows of his guards. He didn't take a car. He let the rain lash his face, his boots sinking into the mud as he cut through the forest, moving with supernatural speed. He followed the pull, the scent of nothing. That was what was so maddening. He could smell the rain, the pine, the ozone, but underneath it, there was a void, a place where a scent should be. It led him to the main street of the dreary human town, to a small cafe called The Spotted Owl. He pushed the door open, a small bell chiming mockingly. The place was warm, smelling of sugar and burnt beans. And then he saw her. She was behind the counter, wiping it down. Plain, small, brown hair pulled back in a messy bun. She wore a faded green apron and looked exhausted. Human. Entirely, utterly, and disappointingly human. But his wolf, the beast of rage and power that ruled his blood, rose on its hind legs inside his chest and howled in recognition. Mine. Kaelan froze. This was impossible. This waitress? The goddess had to be mocking him. He could smell no wolf on her. Only the sharp, bitter scent of herbs. Wolfsbane. His eyes narrowed. She was suppressing. But why? Elena's heart was a hummingbird in her throat. She could smell him. Oh, goddess, she could smell him. He smelled of pine needles after a storm, of ozone, and of an authority so absolute it was a physical weight. He was everything she had run from. He was the apex predator, and she was, by all appearances, the prey. Can I help you?" Her voice trembled. Kaelan walked toward the counter, his movements impossibly fluid. He didn't look at the menu. His golden eyes were locked on her, dissecting her, trying to solve the puzzle she presented. "Black coffee," he commanded. His voice was a deep rumble that vibrated through the floor. "Right. 1 black coffee." Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely scoop the beans. She tried to hide behind the hiss of the espresso machine, but she could feel his gaze on her back, burning through her shirt. She fumbled with the cup, acutely aware of his silence. He wasn't just waiting. He was hunting. He knows. He knows. He knows. He can't know. We are human. She finally finished the drink and placed it on the counter, careful to keep her hands away from his. "That'll be $2.50. He didn't reach for his wallet. He just stared at her. "What is your name?" "Elena," she whispered, her eyes darting to the door. "Elena Dawson." "Elena," he repeated, tasting the name. "You're afraid. You're a very large man, sir. It's late. I'm alone." A flicker of something, amusement, irritation, crossed his face. "I'm not going to hurt you." He reached out, not for the coffee, but for her. Elena flinched, pulling her hand back, but she wasn't fast enough. His fingers, calloused and radiating heat, brushed the skin of her wrist. It wasn't a spark. It was an explosion. A blinding silver light erupted from the point of contact. Elena cried out, stumbling back. A searing pain, hotter than any fire, lanced up her arm. She looked down at her wrist, the one he'd touched. Shimmering on her skin, as if tattooed in moonlight, was a new mark. It was a crescent moon, entwined with a stylized, regal wolf's head. The mark of the king. Kaelan stared, his face a mask of disbelief and raw, unadulterated fury. He looked from her wrist to her terrified, tear-filled eyes. "No," he breathed. It was impossible. He had just forcibly marked a human. The bond, the sacred, irreversible connection between fated mates, had just snapped into place. With her. Elena dropped the coffee cup. It shattered on the floor, brown liquid and ceramic shards spraying everywhere. "What did you do to me?" she sobbed, clutching her burning wrist. Kaelan's gold eyes flashed. The implications of this, a human mate, it would shatter his reign. It would be seen as the ultimate weakness, a pollution of the bloodline. He threw a $20 bill on the counter, his movements jerky, uncontrolled. "You, stay here," he commanded, his alpha voice cracking with confusion. And then he was gone, the door slamming shut, leaving Eleanor alone in the wreckage, the silver brand on her wrist pulsing with a life and a connection that was not her own. The moment Kaelan stormed out of the cafe, 2 things happened at once. First, the bond, now violently activated, flooded Elena's mind. It wasn't just a mark, It was a two-way conduit. She felt his emotions, and they were overwhelming, a tidal wave of pure, apex predator rage, suffocating confusion, and a deep, possessive undercurrent of mine. Second, her body, which had been chemically bullied into dormancy for a decade, began to rebel. The tea. It wasn't working. A wave of nausea so profound it brought her to her knees, hit her. She collapsed behind the counter, gagging, the scent of coffee now unbearably acrid. Her senses, long muted, were roaring to life. She could hear the frantic heartbeat of a rat in the alleyway 2 blocks over. She could smell the pine on Kaelin's jacket, already half a mile away and moving fast. Her bones ached, a deep, seismic pain, as if her skeleton was preparing to rearrange itself. No, not now, not here. She fumbled for her phone, her fingers thick and clumsy. She managed to call Sarah. "Elena, what's wrong? You sound awful." "Sick," Elena gasped, crawling toward the back door. "Locked up, gotta go home. Feel really sick." Okay. Do you need a ride? I can come get you." "No, just, I'll see you tomorrow." She hung up. A lie. She knew she would never see Sarah again. She stumbled out into the alley, the rain feeling like needles on her hypersensitive skin. The world was too loud, too bright, too much. The mark on her wrist was a burning coal. She had to run. It was the only thing she knew how to do. Meanwhile, at the Titan's Ridge Lodge, Kaelin Rathborn shattered a 17th century oak table with one bare-fisted slam. "A human!" he roared. The windows of the presidential suite rattled. Gideon Stone, his beta, stood his ground, though his face was pale. "Kaelin, explain. What happened in town?" "I found her. My mate." Kaelin was pacing, his hands balled into fists, his golden eyes blazing. "She's a barista, a human. I touched her, and the mark, it formed. The goddess has cursed me." Gideon paled further. "A human mate. Kaelin, this cannot be. It has never happened. The bloodlines." "Do you think I don't know that?" Kaelin snarled. "The other alphas, if they find out, they will see this as a sign of the apocalypse. An alpha king bound to a fragile, weak human. What are you going to do?" "I don't know," Kaelin admitted, the rage giving way to a chilling uncertainty. He sank into a chair. "I can feel her. She's terrified. She's in pain." The bond was a torment. Her fear was a high-pitched scream in the back of his mind. "We must control this," Gideon said, switching to damage control. "No one outside this room can know. We find the girl, we seclude her. We figure out what this means." But someone else already knew. Down the hall, Lord Marcus Valerius, Kaelin's chief strategist and alpha of the formidable Silver Moon Pack, stood in the shadows, a faint smile playing on his thin lips. He was the one who had been whispering in the ears of the other alphas, stoking their dissatisfaction with their young, unmated king. He was a man of cold ambition, his grey eyes missing nothing. He had been watching Kaelin. He'd seen him stalk off to town, and he had sent 2 of his own scouts, his most trusted hunters, to follow. They had just reported back, their voices hushed with disbelief over their comms. "My lord, the king, he met a girl. A human barista. He touched her, and the royal mark, it appeared. We saw it." Valerius felt a surge of triumph, so potent it was almost giddy. This was the opening he needed. The king, compromised, bound to a human. He could use this. He could rally the other alphas, declare Kaelin unfit, and seize control of the throne himself. But then, a colder, more familiar thought slithered into his mind. A barista, in Astoria, hiding. He thought back 10 years, the raid on the Ashton compound, the fire, the 2 adult Omegas, dead. He'd been sure the bloodline was extinguished. But the daughter, her body was never found. He'd assumed the forest had claimed her. What if it hadn't? What if a terrified, magically potent Omega child had run, not to other packs, but to the human world? What if she'd used her family's ancient herbal knowledge to mask her scent, to appear human? 10 years, Valerius murmured to himself. She would be of age now. He looked at his hunters. The girl the king marked. She is not human. His voice was a blade. She is the last Ashton Omega. I lost her a decade ago. It seems the moon goddess has just handed her back. He corrected his plan. Seizing the throne was good, but possessing the last lunar Omega, a being who could command the loyalty of all packs with her soothing power, was better. And if he couldn't possess her, he would kill her, just as he had her parents. He would not allow such a tool to remain in Kaelin's hand. Find her, Valerius ordered his men. The king thinks she's human. He'll be confused. He'll hesitate. Do not make the same mistake. Bring her to me, alive if possible, but bring her. Elena, meanwhile, had made it to her apartment. She slammed the door, throwing the deadbolt. Her body was on fire. The shift was coming. It was a decade of suppressed nature fighting its way out. The herbs were useless, burned away by the power of the Alpha King's mark. She tore at her clothes, her skin too tight. She fell to the floor, her joints cracking, her spine elongating. It was agonizing. A scream, half human, half howl, ripped from her throat. She had to run. She grabbed her emergency bag, cash, a fake ID, and a small pouch of the last of her herbs. She scrambled out her window, dropping into the alley just as her apartment door burst open. It wasn't Kaelin. It was 2 men dressed in black tactical gear. Their eyes were cold, and they moved with the predatory grace of pack hunters. "Lord Valerius wants the girl," one of them said, pulling a tranquilizer gun. Elena didn't hesitate. She ran. She was fast, faster than a human, but she was sick and disoriented. They cornered her at the end of the alley, a high chain-link fence blocking her path. "Nowhere to go, Omega," the first hunter sneered. Omega? They knew. She tried to climb, but the second man grabbed her ankle, yanking her down. She hit the pavement hard, the breath knocked out of her. He raised the tranquilizer gun, aiming for her neck. Suddenly, a sound like a low-yield explosion echoed through the alley. A black blur slammed into the first hunter, sending him flying into the brick wall with a sickening crack. The second hunter didn't even have time to turn before a large, calloused hand clamped around his throat, lifting him clear off the ground. Kaelin Rathborn stood in the mouth of the alley, his jacket gone, his Henley soaked, and his eyes no longer gold, but burning pools of molten rage. He wasn't just an alpha, he was the king. "You," Kaelin snarled at the man dangling from his grip, "are touching what is mine." He squeezed, a sharp snap of bone, and the hunter went limp. Kaelin dropped the body and turned. Elena was pressed against the fence, shaking so violently she could barely stand. Her face was streaked with rain and tears. He stalked toward her, his chest heaving. The bond was thrumming, a dark song of possession and protection. He stopped a foot away, looming over her. He looked at the 2 dead hunters, then back at her. "You," he growled, "have a lot of explaining to do. Barista." Elena's world had compressed to the space of a few feet. The alley, the rain, the scent of blood, and the towering inferno of a man in front of her. He knew. He must. She was still fighting the shift, her bones grinding, her vision blurring. But the 2 dead men at his feet were proof. Her human life was over. I don't," she stammered, her voice a pathetic whimper. "Please, I don't know who they were. I just want to go." Kaelin let out a short, harsh laugh. "Go. You are marked. You are mine. The only place you are going is with me." He reached for her. Instinct, buried for 10 years, took over. She ducked under his arm and ran, sprinting for the street. She was impossibly fast for a human, but not for him. He didn't run. He moved. In one fluid, terrifying motion, he was in front of her again, his arm barring her path. "Do not," he whispered, his voice dangerously soft. "Try that again." He looked back at the bodies, his eyes narrowing. He recognized the tactical gear, the specific silver inlay on their blades. They were Valerius's personal guard. The implications of that settled on him, cold and heavy. Why was his chief strategist sending assassins after a human barista? Unless... He turned his full attention back to Eleanor. He inhaled deeply, filtering out the rain and the garbage, pushing past the lingering scent of her herbal suppressants. And there it was. Faint, buried, but unmistakable. The sweet, clean scent of rain-washed clover and moonlight. The scent of wolf. But it was different. It wasn't the musky scent of a beta or the sharp, earthy scent of a pack warrior. It was pure. "You're not human," he stated. It wasn't a question. "I don't know what you're talking about," she cried. But it was a desperate, failing lie. The pain in her body was too much. Her knees buckled. Kaelan caught her before she hit the ground, his left arm wrapping around her waist like a steel band, pulling her flush against his chest. The contact was electric. Her body arched, a strangled sound, half sob, half growl, escaping her. "You're shifting," he said, his voice a mixture of astonishment and something else, comprehension. "You've been suppressing for years." He looked at the dead hunters again. They knew. They called you Omega. Elena froze. The word was a death sentence. It was the word that had gotten her family killed. "Please," she begged, her hands pushing weakly against his granite-hard chest. "You have to let me go. He'll find me. He'll kill me." "Who?" Kaelan demanded. "Who will kill you?" "The man. The one with the grey eyes. He killed my family. He'll kill me too." Kaelan's blood ran cold. Valerius. It all clicked into place. The Ashton massacre 10 years ago. The lost daughter. The rumors of a lunar Omega bloodline. A line Valerius himself had dismissed as myth. He hadn't been dismissing a myth. He had been covering his tracks. And this woman, this small, terrified, impossibly strong woman, was the last survivor. The goddess hadn't been mocking him by binding him to a human. She had been binding him to the single most valuable and most endangered werewolf on the continent. He made a decision. There was no summit. There was no politics. There was only her. Without a word, he bent down and slid his other arm under her knees, lifting her effortlessly into his arms. "What are you doing?" she shrieked, struggling. "I am claiming what is mine," he growled, his alpha command rolling over her, silencing her protests and making her wolf, for the first time, submit. "You've been running for 10 years. Your running is over." He turned and began to walk, carrying her out of the alley. His beta, Gideon, was waiting by a black, armored SUV, his face grim. He had clearly heard the commotion. "Gideon," Kaelan ordered, opening the back door and placing Elena inside. "Lock down the lodge. No one leaves. No one especially contacts Lord Valerius. Place my personal guard on him. Tell him he is required in the Great Hall. Do not let him out of your sight." Gideon's eyes widened as he saw the trembling woman in the back seat, and more importantly, the glowing silver mark on her wrist. "By the goddess," Gideon breathed. She's not human." "She is a wolf," Kaelan said, his voice flat. "And Valerius just tried to kill her." Gideon's expression hardened. "He won't get a second chance. I'll handle the lodge." "No," Kalen said, climbing into the driver's seat. "You're coming with us. I'm moving the summit. The king's prerogative." "Moving it? To where?" Kalen started the engine, the vehicle's roar a deep counterpoint to the storm. He looked at Elena in the rearview mirror. She was curled into a ball, her body shaking. "To the ancestral seat, to the one place on this continent Valerius can't touch us." He pulled onto the highway, heading north. "We're going home." The drive was a blur of agony for Elena. The shift, denied for so long, was tearing her apart. The close proximity to Kalen, her mate, was amplifying it, his raw power acting as a catalyst. She wasn't just in pain, she was changing. "It hurts," she whimpered from the back seat, her fingernails elongating into claws, tearing at the luxury leather. "Breathe," Kalen commanded from the front, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. He could feel her pain through the bond, as if it were his own. "Fight it. We are not safe yet." They drove for hours, leaving the Oregon coast, climbing high into the mountains, passing through checkpoints Elena had never known existed, manned by guards in unmarked uniforms who snapped to salute as Kalen's SUV approached. They were leaving the human world entirely. Finally, as dawn approached, they passed through a massive, wrought-iron gate and into a valley hidden from the world. In the center stood a fortress, not of a lodge, but of ancient stone and timber, a place of old power. The ancestral seat. Kalen carried her inside, past stunned servants and guards. He didn't take her to a guest room. He took her to his chambers, a massive suite of rooms, dominated by a stone fireplace and a bed big enough for four. He laid her on the thick furs. "No one will harm you here. You are under my protection." "Protection?" she gasped, her spine arching. "This is a cage." "It is what you need," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle. He looked at her, truly looked at her, and saw not a barista, but a terrified survivor. "The shift is coming," he said. "You cannot stop it. Don't fight it. Let it happen." "I can't," she sobbed. "If I let it, Elara, she'll be gone. Elena is all I am." "Elena is the lie," Kalen said, kneeling beside her. "Elara is who you are, and she is who the goddess bound to me." He placed a hand on her forehead. His touch was no longer burning. It was grounding. His power flowed into her, not to dominate, but to steady. "You are not alone, little wolf," he murmured. "Shift. I will keep you safe." With that, the last of her human defenses crumbled. Her bones snapped, her skin tore, and a howl of decade-old pain and liberation ripped through the fortress. Kalen watched, his face grim, as the human barista vanished, replaced by a creature of legend. The transformation was not the clean, instantaneous event depicted in human movies. It was a brutal, agonizing deconstruction. Elena, Elara, felt her joints dislocate, her muscles tear and reknit, her senses explode in a supernova of stimuli. The 10 years of suppression had poisoned the process. It was a decade of natural instinct fighting its way out of a chemical prison. Kalen stayed with her, a solid, unmovable presence in the storm. He'd seen countless shifts, but never one like this. Never one so saturated in pain and fear. He felt a sharp, protective rage build in his chest. Not at her, but for her. He wanted to hunt down Valerius and tear him apart for every second of agony she was enduring. When it was over, Elara lay on the fur rugs, panting, her new body slick with sweat. Kalen stared. He had expected a normal wolf, a brown or black wolf, perhaps, shaken and weak from the ordeal. He was wrong. She was small, perhaps only 2/3 the size of a standard pack wolf, Her fur was not brown or black, but a stunning, luminous silver, as if it were spun from moonlight itself. She was sleek, built for speed and silence, not for brute force. But the most unsettling thing was her eyes. They were a deep, intelligent sapphire blue, and they radiated an aura so profound it was a physical force. It was an aura of peace. The moment her shift completed, the rage that perpetually simmered under Kaelin's skin, the burden of the Alpha King, simply quieted. The crushing weight of his responsibility eased. The beast in his chest, usually pacing, sat back on its haunches and observed, calm for the first time in his adult life. He looked at his hands, no longer clenched into fists. "Goddess," he breathed. "It's true." He was looking at a lunar omega. The legends were real. His ancestors had written of them, a bloodline of wolves who didn't fight, but healed. They could soothe pack rage, stop internal conflicts, and even calm the rage, the bloodlust that could overwhelm an alpha and turn him into a mindless killer. His pack, and the continent, had been at war for 50 years, ever since the last lunar omega had died, or so they'd thought. Ilara, in her new form, whimpered. She was disoriented, trapped in a body she hadn't inhabited since she was a child. "It's okay," Kaelin said, not aloud, but through the new, heightened connection of the bond. He projected calm, reassurance. She looked up, startled, her blue eyes wide. I can hear you. I am your mate, Ilara. We are bound. Soul to soul." He sat on the floor, keeping his distance to avoid frightening her, but remaining present. "You are Ilara Ashton, the last of your line." She scrambled back, her claws clicking on the stone floor until she hit the wall. "No. I'm Elena Dawson. I make lattes. I'm human." "You haven't been human for a very long time," Kaelin said gently. "You've just been lying to yourself. You're safe now. But I need you to tell me everything. I need to know why Marcus Valerius slaughtered your family." Ilara trembled, the memory overwhelming her. But the king's calm, steady presence through the bond was an anchor. Slowly, haltingly, she began to show him. She projected her memories through the bond. The fire, the silver blades, her parents not fighting back, but trying to project their calming aura, to stop the violence. And the leader, Lord Valerius, watching, his grey eyes cold and unaffected, his immunity to their power a terrifying anomaly. He hadn't just been killing them, he'd been studying them. He'd wanted to know why his rage was the only one they couldn't touch. As Kaelin saw the massacre through her 10-year-old eyes, his own calm shattered, replaced by a glacial, killing fury. Valerius hadn't just eliminated a rival. He had exterminated the only thing that could bring peace to the packs. "Why?" Kaelin demanded, his own mind brushing against hers. "Because he thrives on war," Ilara projected, the truth coming to her with the clarity of her returned nature. "War is his currency. He creates chaos, then presents himself as the only one who can forge order. He advises you. He stokes the fires with the European covens. He wants the packs to fight. It makes him powerful. My family, we were the only ones who could stop it. We could have brought peace. So he murdered us." Kaelin stood. The full, horrifying scope of the betrayal settled on him. Valerius wasn't just ambitious. He was a cancer. He had been playing the entire continent, Kaelin included, for a fool. "Gideon!" Kaelin roared, his voice shaking the stone walls. The beta burst into the room, his hand on the silver-plated pistol at his hip. He stopped dead, his eyes fixing on the small, silver wolf cowering by the wall. "My king!" "It's worse than we thought," Kaelin said, his voice lethally quiet. "He didn't just try to kill my mate. He created the instability I've been fighting my entire reign. He's responsible for the southern border wars. He's been arming the rogues." He looked at Elara, her silver fur matted with sweat and rain. "And he's been hunting her for a decade to finish the job." Gideon's face was ashen. "He's at the lodge, with all the other alphas. He's been feeding them lies about you for days, about your instability, your lack of a mate." Kaelin's lips pulled back in a snarl. "And now I've given him the perfect weapon." "What do you mean?" "I've marked a human," Kaelin said, the bitter irony stinging. "That's what he'll tell them. He doesn't know she's here. He thinks I'm still in Astoria, confused, compromised by a human girl. He'll be making his move right now." As if summoned, Kaelin's phone buzzed. It was a text from his head guard at the lodge. "Valerius has called an emergency Alpha conclave. He is claiming the king is compromised by an outside influence. He is moving for a vote of no confidence. He has the lodge on lockdown. He's making his coup," Kaelin growled. Elara, still on the floor, forced her aching body to shift back. The second transformation was quicker, but still agonizing. She collapsed, naked and shaking, but undeniably human-shaped once more. "He'll win, won't he?" she whispered, huddling in the furs. "He'll tell them you're weak, bound to a runt Omega who pretended to be human." Kaelin looked at her. He saw her fear, but underneath it, he saw the steel that had allowed her to survive for 10 years alone. "He'll try," Kaelin said. He walked to a massive chest and pulled out a simple black tunic and trousers, tossing them to her. "Get dressed." "What?" "Why?" "You said you were a barista. You said you were weak. You were wrong." He turned to Gideon. "Get the jet ready. We're going back to the lodge." Gideon looked horrified. "Kaelin, it's a trap. He has all the alphas on his side." "He thinks he does," Kaelin said. He looked at Elara as she shakily pulled on the clothes. "He thinks he's exposing my greatest weakness, but he's about to find out. He just cornered my greatest strength." The flight back to Oregon was a tense, vibrating silence. Elara sat across from Kaelin in the private jet, the hum of the engines a dull roar beneath her feet. Her senses were still screaming. She could smell the ozone from the storm clouds they were flying through, the faint tang of adrenaline on Gideon, and the overwhelming, grounding scent of pine and power from Kaelin. The bond was a living thing between them. He was projecting a steady, iron-clad resolve, a wall of strength she could lean against. And she, without meaning to, was projecting a clear, sharp calm that cut through his royal fury, honing it from a wildfire into a white-hot blade. They were already, instinctively, balancing each other. "They will kill me," Elara said, breaking the silence. "The moment they see me. A weak Omega who broke the first law and hid in the human world." "They will see what I tell them to see," Kaelin responded, his golden eyes locked on hers. "You are not weak. You are a survivor. And you are not just an Omega. You are my Omega. You are the Queen. They will respect that, or they will die. You can't just kill all of them," she argued, her voice gaining a little of its old, barista-level fire. "That's what Valerius wants. He wants you to be the tyrant. He wants you to prove him right." Kaelin paused, studying her. A slow, dangerous smile touched his lips. "You are right. I cannot. But we can show them the truth." "How?" "You are a lunar Omega. Your family's gift was to soothe the rage. Valerius has spent years stoking that rage in the other alphas, making them paranoid, aggressive, and greedy. He has them primed for war. You are the only one who can show them what true peace feels like. You are the antidote to him. I don't know how, she whispered, looking at her hands. My parents, they tried. It didn't work. He killed them. It didn't work on him, Kalen said, his voice hardening, but it will work on the others. He is an anomaly, a wolf without a soul. The other alphas are just lost. You will be their North Star. They landed in a private airfield, 5 miles from the Titan's Ridge Lodge. Kalen's most loyal guards, the Royal Pack, were waiting. They were 10 wolves, male and female, sculpted by war, and their loyalty to Kalen was absolute. They looked at Elara with curiosity, but when they saw the mark on her wrist and the way Kalen stood at her side, they bowed their heads in deference. The lodge was a fortress. Valerius's men were at the perimeter, but Kalen's royal pack moved like ghosts. They neutralized the outer guards silently, clearing a path to the great hall. "The conclave is in session," Gideon reported, his earpiece buzzing. "Valerius is speaking now." Kalen nodded. He looked at Elara, who was trembling. "Do not be afraid. You are not a barista. You are not a victim. You are the last Ashton, and you are my queen." He offered her his hand. She looked at it for a second, then placed her small, trembling hand in his large, calloused one. His strength flowed into her, and she stood taller. Together they walked to the massive oak doors of the great hall. Inside, the air was thick with smoke, whiskey, and animosity. 30 of the most powerful alphas in North America were gathered, their forms half shadow, half man. At the front, standing before the cold fireplace, was Marcus Valerius. "And so I tell you," Valerius was saying, his voice smooth and reasonable, "our king is not himself. He has been compromised. He fled his duty, his summit, chasing a fantasy. And worse, he has bound himself." "Bound himself to what, Valerius?" growled the Redwood Alpha. "Speak plainly." Valerius sighed, as if burdened by a terrible truth. "He has marked a human, a common human waitress. He has polluted the royal bloodline and shamed us all. He has proven himself unstable, unfit, and I, as his loyal strategist, must ask you to invoke the challenge clause and remove him. For the good of the packs." A low, dangerous growl rumbled through the room. The alphas were agitated, their wolves close to the surface. "He's right," another alpha snarled. "A human mate. It's an abomination." "Where is he?" shouted a third. "Why does he hide?" "He doesn't," a new voice boomed. The great oak door slammed open. Kalen Rathborn stood on the threshold, his eyes blazing gold. He was not dressed for a meeting. He was dressed for war. At his side, her hand still in his, was Elara. A collective gasp went through the room. They saw the king, and they saw the small, plain, human woman beside him. They saw the glowing, undeniable royal mark on her wrist. Valerius's performance of sad duty vanished, replaced by a flash of pure triumph. It was all going to plan. The king had walked right into the trap. "You see?" Valerius shouted, pointing at Elara. "Behold the king's weakness, the human who has brought our world to the brink." "She is not human." Kalen's voice cut through the uproar like a whip. "A lie," Valerius countered. "My men tracked her. She has lived as a human for 10 years. She smells of human filth and herbs." "She smells of herbs," Kalen agreed, taking a step into the room, pulling Elara with him. "Because you, Marcus Valerius, forced her to. Because 10 years ago, you led the massacre of the Ashton family." The room went dead silent. The name Ashton was a whispered myth, a bedtime story of a time of peace. Valerius's face went pale. "More lies. The king is delusional." "Is he?" Elara spoke. Her voice was quiet, not an alpha's command, but it cut through the silence nonetheless. The alphas turned to look at her. I am Elara Ashton, she said, her voice shaking but gaining strength, daughter of Lyra and Kian. He, she pointed a trembling finger at Valerius, burned my home. He slaughtered my parents. I ran. I hid. I pretended to be human so his death squads wouldn't find me, just as his men tried to kill me last night. Valerius laughed. A convenient story. A human girl claiming a mythical bloodline to save her compromised lover. Do you take us for fools? Yes, Kaelin snarled. He does take you for fools. The Alphas were confused, caught between their king and his most trusted advisor. Their inner wolves were agitated, sensing the conflict. The rage was building. Fights were seconds from breaking out. Enough! The Redwood Alpha roared, his eyes flashing. This is chaos. We will settle this. Valerius, you have invoked the challenge. You will fight the king. The goddess will choose the victor. Valerius smiled. This was also acceptable. He was a cunning fighter, and with the Alphas convinced Kaelin was unstable, even if Kaelin won, he would have lost their respect. I accept, Valerius said. No, Elara said, stepping forward. Kaelin tightened his grip on her hand. Elara, no. Trust me, she projected back. She let go of his hand and walked into the center of the room. The Alphas looked at her, a wolf among lions. You are all angry, she said, her voice echoing. You feel the rage. You feel the paranoia. He, she nodded to Valerius, has been feeding it to you for years. He wants you to fight. He wants you to tear each other apart so he can rule the ashes. Empty words, little girl, Valerius sneered. Are they? Elara closed her eyes. She stopped thinking about the barista. She stopped thinking about the victim. She embraced the power she had buried for a decade. She embraced the lunar omega. She didn't push. She released. A wave of power, silent and invisible, radiated from her. It was not a command. It was not an attack. It was peace. It was the scent of cool clover, the feeling of a full moon on a calm night, the memory of the first snow. It was the absolute, undeniable spiritual truth. The rage in the room dissolved. The Alpha's bloodlust evaporated. The paranoia, the anger, the suspicion, it all washed away, leaving behind only a stunned, cold clarity. The Alphas looked at their hands, at each other, as if waking from a long, dark dream. They looked at Valerius, and for the first time, they saw him clearly. They saw the cold, empty ambition. They saw the darkness inside him. The Redwood Alpha looked at Valerius, his eyes wide. He is empty. The goddess. She's not with him. Valerius, for the first time, looked terrified. Her power. It hadn't worked on him, but it had worked on everyone else. He was exposed. Lies! Witchcraft! He screamed, pulling a long, silver-plated dagger from his jacket. She's a witch, not an omega. He lunged, not at Kaelin, but at Elara. He never made it. Kaelin moved so fast he was a blur. He didn't just intercept Valerius. He ended him. There was no protracted duel. There was only the Alpha King, filled with the righteous fury of a wronged mate, and the traitor. Kaelin's hand caught Valerius's wrist, snapping it. His other hand went to Valerius's throat. This, Kaelin roared, his voice the judgment of the goddess herself, is for the Ashton line. This is for my mate. He ripped the traitor's life from him in one brutal, definitive, and final motion. Valerius's body fell to the floor. The silence in the room was absolute. Kaelin stood over the body, his chest heaving. The rage was on him, the killing urge. Kaelin. He heard her voice in his mind. He felt her power, a gentle hand on his soul, pulling him back from the brink. He looked at her. Elara was standing there, her eyes filled not with fear, but with strength. The rage receded. He was in control. He turned to the silent, stunned Alphas. Marcus Valerius was a traitor who murdered the line of peace to keep us at war. I have taken his life, and his pack is forfeit. He walked to Ilara's side, pulling her to him. He held up their joined hands, the glowing mark pulsing for all to see. This is not my weakness. This is Ilara Ashton Wrathborn. She is a lunar omega. She is my fated mate, and she is your queen. One by one, the Alphas, their minds clear for the first time in years, dropped to one knee. The Redwood Alpha was the last, his face a mask of awe. "My king," he said, his voice thick. "My queen. The wars are over." The sun rose over the Titan's Ridge Lodge, but it was a different world. The darkness that had plagued the packs for a generation had been lifted, its source lying dead in the Great Hall. The transition was swift. With the truth revealed, and Valerius's influence gone, the Alpha's loyalty to Kaelin was absolute, reinforced by their newfound reverence for Ilara. Her very presence was a balm, a promise of a new era. Kaelin and Ilara stood on the balcony of the presidential suite, watching the Alphas depart. They weren't just returning to their territories, they were carrying the news. Peace was possible. "Are you okay?" Kaelin asked, his voice low. He hadn't let go of her hand. "I'm not Elena," she said, watching a car disappear down the mountain. "I don't know who I am." "You are Ilara," he said, turning her to face him. "And you are my mate." He was still coated in the grime of the fight. She was still in the borrowed clothes. It was all too fast. "What about Sarah?" Ilara asked suddenly. "My friend, my apartment. She'll be worried. She'll think I'm dead." Kaelin nodded. "Gideon is handling it." "Handling it? Your human life must be concluded. Gideon is planting evidence. You won a small lottery, a few 100,000, enough to vanish. You left a note for Sarah, thanking her, and are now backpacking through Europe. Your apartment lease is paid off. Your friend will be sad, but she will believe you are safe and happy. It is the kindest way." Ilara felt a pang of sadness. That life, the lie, was truly over. Elena Dawson was gone. "Thank you," she whispered. Kaelin gently touched the mark on her wrist. It was no longer burning, but a part of her, a beautiful, permanent silver tattoo. "He could have killed you," Kaelin murmured, his golden eyes dark with the memory. "When he lunged." "But he didn't," Ilara said, placing her other hand over his. "You were faster. And you," he said, "were stronger. You faced 30 Alphas and a murderer, and you didn't flinch. You saved us all, not with claws, but with you." He was the Alpha King, a creature of absolute power and primal force, and she was the lunar Omega, a being of absolute calm and healing. He was the shield, and she was the heart. Together, they were whole. "I was hiding for 10 years, Ilara said, a slow smile touching her lips for the first time. "I was so afraid of being found. I thought I was a runt, a weakness." "You were never weak," Kaelin said, his voice raw. "You were just waiting." He lowered his head, his gaze intense, asking permission. She gave it, rising on her toes to meet him. Their first kiss was not the gentle exploration of a new romance. It was a collision of fate, a decade of loneliness and fear crashing into a lifetime of duty and rage. It was the sealing of the bond. It was fire and ice, predator and peace, Alpha and Omega. It was the beginning. When they broke apart, the sun was fully above the horizon, flooding the valley with light. "The Alphas are gone," Ilara noted. "They will be back," Kaelin said, wrapping his arms around her waist and pulling her against his chest, her new home. "We have to rebuild a generation of trust Valerius broke. There is work to do." "And we'll do it together," she said, no longer a question, but a statement. Together, he affirmed. She leaned her head against his chest, listening to the steady, powerful beat of his heart. The terrified barista who had pretended to be human for a decade was gone. In her place was Ilara Rathborn, the Lunar Queen. She had been marked by the Alpha King, and in doing so, she had found not a master, but her destiny. And so, the barista who was a queen, and the king who was a savage, found their balance. Elena's 10-year-long lie was over, but Ilara's new truth was just beginning. She was no longer hiding from her past. She was building a future, and the power she once thought was a curse had become the key to saving them all. The Alpha King didn't just find his mate. He found the one soul in the world who could calm his rage and rule by his side. Theirs wasn't just a love story. It was the dawn of a new era. Thank you for listening to this full story. What did you think of Ilara's transformation? Did you see the twist with Lord Valerius coming? Let me know your favorite part in the comments below. Your support means the world, so please hit that like button, share this video with a friend who loves a good story, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel for more content just like this.